Greetings, aspirants. Today we are going to talk about a new concept from the subject Environment and Ecology, that is ecological succession. So what is ecological succession? Let's look at it. Ecological succession is a process in which communities or species of plants and animals in an area are replaced or changed into another over a period of time. Now it is a process in which the communities or species change over a period of time. So what helps to the change of such communities and species over a period of time is it involves both the abiotic and biotic components. What are abiotic components? Components such as sunlight, precipitation like rainfall, and other factors, and biotic factors such as energy flow or decomposition, etc. Now, what here the activities of the communities and of the physical environment in a particular area also help the process of ecological succession. And there are two types of succession, that is primary succession and secondary succession. Now let's understand the concept of ecological succession using an example. Now, we often find bare rocks, like when volcano really there is a lava flow and molten rocks solidifies and forms bare rocks. Over a period of time, these bare rocks are invaded by species like lichens, that is fungi and algae living in a symbiotic relationship. Now, when they're invaded by lichens, they start to draw nutrients from the bare rocks. What happens next? They die and they start to decompose. Now, after their decomposition, they add extra nutrients to the bare rocks, on which slowly mosses start to grow, which are like green grass-like organisms that grow on bare rocks. Here, the soil is not yet formed. Now, when these mosses tend to grow, and they grow very rapidly, and afterwards when they die and they also decompose, they add more nutrients and they also start to weather the rocks, and hence soil is formed. Right. Once the soil is formed and the nutrients keep adding due to the decomposition of mosses, you slowly start observe the growth of shrubs and grasses in the same area. Now what does these shrubs and grasses do? They tend to fix the nitrogen into the soil and they aerate the soil more. Now after these shrubs and grass also die and they start to decompose, they add extra nutrients again to the soil and they are fixing the nitrogen, they're aerating the soil, which helps in the growth of plants. Now when plants start growing and decomposing, adding more nutrients, slowly the soil becomes more nutritious and helps in the growth of woodlands. Woodlands are forest-like ecosystems where the stem becomes stronger, but the canopy of the trees are not as wide as in the forest ecosystem. And slowly, when these start to die and decompose and the humus starts accumulating in the soil and becoming more nutritious, the soil now can produce forests. Now, we have seen how a bare rock ecosystem has converted slowly into a forest ecosystem. Right. Now, a community has changed over time, and this process might take millions of years to form. So, when the process of change starts from bare rocks where there is no soil, such kind of succession, ecological succession, is called a primary succession. So when primary succession takes place over a bare or unoccupied areas, such ecological succession is called primary succession. Now, what are the examples? It might start from rocks outcrop or emerging volcano islands or glacial moraines. What are glacial moraines? When glacials tend to retreat, then you can find the rocks and the soil underneath that are exposed. Now on this again you can find the lichens invading, and the same procedure repeats. So let's see what are pioneer species. Pioneer species are the organisms which invade the ecosystem in the beginning. So these are the organisms like lichens or the plants that invade first bare land, where soil is initially absent, is called pioneer species, and the assemblage of these pioneer plants collectively is called as pioneer community. Right. Now, we already discussed the rate of growth is high in pioneer species. So they grow very fast at a very fast pace, and they die and decompose, adding more nutrients to the ecosystem. Moving on, let's see what are climax species. Climax species, in the example that we have discussed, is the forest ecosystem. So it is the last stage or the final stage of ecological succession is called a climax community. The community that grows at the final stage is called a climax community, and the species are called climax species. Now these are relatively very stable. Now after this formation of forest ecosystem, there is no further succession. The succession stops at this ecosystem. So these communities are called climax communities, and these are very stable and long lasting. There is no further change or succession after the climax community. So these are stable, mature and complex and long lasting ecosystems. And succession that occurs on land, like we have seen on bare rocks or from lava after the molten lava has solidified, or glacial moraines, we can say that when the ecosystems or when the succession starts from a terrestrial or on a bare rock, terrestrial ecosystems, this is called a xerarch. It is called a xerarch. But if the succession starts from a pond or a water body, like a pond or a lake, that is like when there is a pond or a lake existing here. Slowly the sediments start to flow here into the pond or lake due to various reasons like runoff during floods, and it starts to get sedimented. And over years, this becomes a sediment rich pool where the soil is very nutritious. So here again, plants start growing. So if the ecological succession starts from a water body, this kind of ecological succession is called as hydrarch. So if ecological succession starts on bare rocks, it is a xerarch. And if it starts from a water body, it is a hydrarch. Moving on, let's see what is secondary succession. Secondary succession happens when natural calamities like forest fires or floods or volcanic eruptions destroy certain community. Now what happens if forest fires occurs in a forest? It destroys the whole forest and it becomes a bare land. Right, it becomes a bare land. Now the succession has to happen from a bare land. Now this succession does not again start from lichens, because here the soil is already formed. Right, we already have soil here. So once there is soil, slowly you can see the growth of grass, shrubs, plants, etc. Right. So when there is presence of soil and the ecological succession has to happen after a calamity, then this process of succession is called as secondary succession. Right. Now, these development of a community which forms after existing natural vegetation that constitutes a community is removed or disturbed by calamities like hurricanes or forest fires or human related activities like deforestation, etc., then such succession is called secondary succession. And we have to understand that the first primary succession might take millions of years to form, but secondary succession happens relatively fast. That is, it doesn't take as many years as the soil formation. So, summing this up, let's see using a diagram. Here we can see primary succession. Primary succession happens when there is no organisms. It starts from bare land, bare rock. And when plants or food producing organisms like lichens occupy and slowly start to build a community, this is called a primary succession. But when there is an existing community already and some calamity happens, man-made or natural, like forest fires or floods or deforestation, then again a bare land is formed. But here there is no soil, right? But here we already have soil and it is rich in potash due to the ash burning of the wood and leaves there. Now here the process again does not go back to the formation of soil, but slowly you can see the growth of plants directly and slowly the succession happens, and this succession is low and the secondary succession is relatively fast. So today we have understood the concept of ecological succession, the terms like pioneer species and climax species, and what is primary succession and secondary succession. Thank you.